Welcome to Adult Piano Adventures, Book 2. If you've completed Book 1, congratulations. You're now on Book 2, which is a tremendous booster for your skills. And if you're newly returning to the piano, then welcome back. Probably something in you has been calling you to the piano, drawing you back again. And I want to applaud that and suggest that you get in touch with that inner voice. It's probably drawing you to the sense of personal musical expression. So if you think of piano then as your new friend, get reacquainted with the piano because the piano is going to be your partner for your personal creativity. We have the book and we have some videos. And so here in the videos as I'm speaking, I'd like to try to give you a professional perspective, which is a new look on the music. When you were studying earlier, you probably had a sense of adding new terms and concepts, piling on piece after piece. So here instead we're going to reshape, in some ways unlearn some ways of thinking and take a new perspective, a professional perspective, if you will, that you can do now at your age and maturity that maybe wasn't quite so easy to have when you were young. What I want to do is think of, instead of adding on more concepts, let's think of sculpting music. We're going to take away, and by taking away, we're going to find patterns that emerge, and then we're going to recreate with those patterns. And thus you have tools then for your own personal music making. Let's get started. Here on page 6 and 7, we begin Unit 1, which is a review of the music fundamentals. So the fundamentals here, we might think of, okay, we have rhythm and we have note reading. So we have notes and rhythm, notes and rhythm. What's more important, notes or rhythm? I would like to maintain that the rhythm is most important, because even if we did clusters of notes, in other words, maybe I could do almost wrong notes here. But notice, as long as I have rhythm, it's really functional and expressive. Whereas if I played all of the right notes, but there just wasn't a rhythmic continuity, then it falls apart. It disengages the listener. So put rhythm as a priority. It's not the easiest part of playing the piano, to be sure, but it is important for the music making. So put attention to hands alone, to a sense of a light, slow dance rhythms. You don't have to be fast to be rhythmic. That's going to be very important. Slow things down, play hands alone, and bring out the Piano Adventures player app, because that little player app will be your drum machine. It'll be your modern metronome, if you will, to help feel the rhythm and to play hands alone or even hands together with the selections. So with rhythm being important, here on our pages 6 and 7, we're saying note values. How do we show rhythm with notated? And time signatures. The time signatures on page 7 refers to the grouping of notes, or grouping of rhythm, you might say. The grouping is always a sense of flow of meter through 4 beats in a measure, 3 beats in a measure, recurring patterns, if you will. So we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and it flows to the downbeat. The downbeat is your beat 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's illustrate that with a review piece on page 14. Allegro moderato, we would count this 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice I think that through in my mind. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and then jump in. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 1, 2. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then repeating it softly. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Notice the retard is just that slowing down of the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. A lot of classical music, especially the music of Haydn, Mozart, early Beethoven, the real classicists of the mid to late 1700s, early 1800s, the rhythm not only flows 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, but you can think of having a strong measure. That's the first measure, is right, each grouping of 4. So we have a strong measure followed by a weak measure, strong, weak. So strong and a weak. 3, 4, and then a weak measure, and a strong measure, and then a weak measure, strong and weak. So not only are we matching or grouping by measures, 4, 4, 4, 4, but we have a strong, weak, and that makes up sections. So we have our section A here, and then as we noted in our music at measure 9, we get our section B. So we get this organization, you might say, and the organization is really built around the flow of rhythm. Let's go back to our unit, our review pages here of 6 and 7. 7 was the time signature. Now we're going to take a look at page 6, note values. Well, 90% of music has a 4/4 time signature. That's by far most common for dance and pieces in general. So 4/4 is so common, it's no wonder then that we use this to name note values. A whole note is 4 counts. You might say, well, why is it 4 counts? If it's a whole note, well, if we're in 4/4 time, that's a whole measure, right? 4 beats in a measure, so 4 beats is the whole measure, a whole note. A half note is half of a measure, quarter note is a quarter of a measure. Gives us a little definition of background there, but it's not that terribly useful because we're going to still count the quarter note usually as our main note value. Remember, it's 4/4 time or 3/4 time. That bottom 4 stands for quarter note. So we're counting the quarter note as our main unit of beats. Let's go to the next page and looking at how do we take the notes, the pitches, and how do we show that on the staff. And we recognize that we have lines and spaces, lines and spaces. We have a line, space, line, space, line, space, line, space. So that stepwise motion, notes that are next to each other, are going to alternate line space, which means if we go from a line to a line and stack those, now we're building up a harmony, aren't we? We've learned in the first book that if we start on that space, then the treble clef, first space F, go up and skip space, space, space. That spells that word F-A-C-E. It also outlines a harmony. It outlines a nice chord for us to play with. So as you see stacked notes, you're going to have chords. When you see line space, then we're moving stepwise. You can catch that at a glance as in dynamic study. Line space, so we're going up and back down, and now we're stacking the notes. Which takes us to the concept of harmony. Let's turn that page again, jumping to 12:13. We have scales and chords. It's easy to think of scales and chords as being separate pieces of musical theory, but really scales and chords are very intimately related. Just as we saw this lines and spaces, our scale is just organizing a set of notes according to the line space sequence, but the chords are just skipping notes within our scale. Let's take a look at how that works. I'm going to shift from the C scale to G scale, which means G is our home note, okay? And that black key there, that F sharp, that's just a half step below that G. That's the leading tone, and it defines G as that home note. So we have no longer 88 keys to think about, but when we're in the key of G, the G scale defines these 7 pitches, and they're just repeating down, right? So I can play these pitches anywhere around the piano. And if I want harmony, I go up and skips. And if I want melody, I can stepwise motion. Don't be too concerned about right and wrong notes. Just choose notes out of the scale, because that's a palette of color for that key. This greatly simplifies your sense of creativity, because as long as you're choosing from in that set of watercolors, if you will, of those 7 pitches, you're going to have a beautifully expressive or potentially expressive sound. You put it in the context of little rhythm. And there you have a piece, you see. So explore. These are not keys to make mistakes on. They're keys of opportunity. They're chances to play with sound, draw your sound out of the piano. You have to explore. If something doesn't sound right, then it is not right. You can choose something different. Choose a note nearby. But use the piano here as your exploratory friend for your own creative expression.